Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with a Repertoire video by popular demand for a survey of available recordings, or historically available recordings, of Richard Strauss's Also sprach Zarathustra. Now, it's been a while since I've done a repertoire video. I've been meaning to do more of them. And doing the Strauss tone poems would be oodles of fun because I only have an ideal Strauss tone poem video. So maybe we'll do a few of these, but we'll see how it goes. We shall see what the response is. I enjoyed particularly doing this one because it allowed me to reflect on the discographic history of the work. One of the things that's so interesting, for me anyway, about Zarathustra is the fact that it has vanished, all but vanished, from the active discography of most of today's major conductors. A lot of Richard Strauss has, generally speaking, not the operas. Operas are a special category, and his operas will always have their place in the repertoire. But his orchestral music really seems to be on the outs, at least the really big pieces. Joanne Falletta in Buffalo did a very fine Heldenleben recently, but aside from that, there just hasn't been that much. And Zarathustra used to be one of the ne plus ultra pieces of orchestral splashiness. Big, huge, pull out all the stops. Nowadays, everyone's doing Mahler symphonies, Bruckner symphonies, other stuff like that. But Richard Strauss tone poems, well, the only popular one nowadays seems to be an Alpensymphonie. The Alpine Symphony, which was widely derided as a derivative, epigon, one of the least interesting of all the tone poems. And now that's the one people want to do, maybe because it's the hugest of all of them in terms of its orchestral forces, and also the simplest. But Zarathustra, it's just not around that much anymore. And I'm kind of surprised. Yes, in my video about flawed masterpieces, I talked about how it basically is one giant anticlimax after the opening, but it has lots of good music, and that opening is spectacular, and it certainly justifies hearing the rest of it. It's not crazy long. It's about 32 minutes in most performances, 30 to 32 minutes. Which isn't really longer than, a movement in like Bruckner's Ninth, that people play constantly. So it stands to reason that it ought to be performed because it's written for today's big, gorgeous, huge modern orchestras. But it just isn't on the roster anymore the way it used to be. I'm looking through all of these recordings. I have 21 of them here, and we'll be talking about others besides. There must be at least 60 or 70 recordings of it all told. And starting with Strauss himself. And so it's really kind of startling how its fortunes have changed. And I don't think it deserves the neglect because it's just full of lovely, enjoyable music. It really is, even if, like I said, it begins with its best climax and nothing quite compares to that. But some things do, or they come close. Yes, you never hear the bell at the end and, the big tolling of the bell at the climax of the second part, and stuff like that doesn't quite work. But the ending is deliberately anticlimactic. It's supposed to be open-ended, the mystery of the universe and all that stuff, and it works. Strauss knew what he was doing. So why don't we start talking about recordings? First, I just want to say a word about Strauss's own. Strauss famously said that conducting his own music bored him. And you can tell. There are no Strauss recordings of his own music that are particularly valuable. And he has absolutely nothing to say about his own music that you can't hear better elsewhere. And I make that dogmatic opening statement because, first of all, his own recordings sound lousy. Some of them date from the 40s and before, but they basically sound like crap. And he doesn't have anything interesting to say about his own music. With some conductors, you say, well, at least you get the tempo, at least you get the rhythm, at least you get... No. Sorry, folks. So let's just set Strauss's own recordings aside. Yes, from a historical point of view, composers conducting their own music is an interesting thing, generically. But he was just nothing special as a conductor of anything, actually, and certainly not of his own music. So there you go. Now, let's start with historical recording, one of them anyway. We could go back to like Kusevitsky, but there's no need to do that. I mean, look, if you're not going to have at least decent sound, if you're not going to hear most of what Strauss wrote and put into these very dense contrapuntal agglomerations of sound that he throws together, there's just no point in wasting your time. There really isn't. But we do have the Vienna Philharmonic with Clemens Krauss, these 1950s mono things that were, recorded, in the 50s. And, people want to hear the Vienna Philharmonic doing this music naturally. And the best Vienna Philharmonic recordings actually are, well, we'll get to them. But these are not them. They were recorded, let's get the date absolutely right. For Zarathustra, it was, hang on a second, I think it was about 51 or 52, but I'll let you know. If I can get it's all sticking together here. It's enough to kill you. Yeah, it's Opus 30, so it's 1951. So the sonics are 1951 mono. The Vienna Philharmonic in 1951 was pretty scruffy sounding. They were still recovering from the Second World War, and the recordings could sound a little papery thin. Clemens Krauss was a good conductor, and he was a Strauss associate, major associate. He was the librettist for Capriccio, and he worked with Strauss intensely. And so, are the interpretations authoritative? Yeah, there's better. There's better. Strauss is not a composer, let's put it this way, whose music plumbs the depths of expressive sublimity, whatever you want to call it. It's really all on the surface with Strauss. And so the real question is, how beautifully can you polish the surface and let us hear all the stuff that's happening below? You're not going to find performances of Strauss with, say, second-rate orchestras and somehow, wayward interpreters that somehow find some fabulous expressive meaning that others don't. That's why Furtwängler was never much of a Straussian, because he was sloppy, and all that would ever happen in his Strauss is that it would sound sloppy. There wasn't anything for him to discover that other people, couldn't do better, that you can't realize by just playing it fabulously. So that's really what you need in this music. Let's be honest with ourselves, shall we? And even in a piece with a hoity-toity philosophical title, like Also sprach Zarathustra, one of the reasons the piece works is because it's essentially meaningless. and so the beauty of its meaninglessness is all there right on the surface for you to realize. You don't have to worry about being profound. Anyway, it's just a thought there. What's next? Okay, we've got Schulte with the Chicago Symphony. Surprisingly, it's a quick performance, 30 minutes and 51 seconds, which is nice. This has an absolutely fabulous Alpine Symphony, this twofer, with Bavarian Radio, a very good Heldenleben with Vienna, which is nice and quick, and the Zarathustra is just nothing special. It just isn't. It's perfunctory. It's well played. Schulte, it's Chicago. You've got the brass section and all that stuff. But it also doesn't seem to spend much time thinking about what it wants to do. It just goes. You can be perfunctory. Strauss was perfunctory. It's a lot like Strauss's own recordings. So, in a way, is this one. Antal Dorati with the Detroit Symphony, splendidly recorded. As usual, Dorati really cared about what his record sounded like. Even his early digital sounded really, really good when everyone else's were sounding like crap, it's coupled with Macbeth, which is actually more fun than Zarathustra, at least in this performance. It's a decent performance. It's very easy to do Strauss decently. It is hard to do Strauss fabulously. It just is, and this is good. But, and Dorati, of course, did quite a bit of Strauss and was a fine Strauss conductor. So it's a good performance, but does it really get you excited and jumping up and down and, drooling? No. And if you're not drooling, then what's the point, right? Then we've got, Karl Böhm with the Berlin Philharmonic. Well, this is interesting. Karl Böhm was, of course, an absolutely fabulous, amazing opera conductor. And he was a wonderful Strauss opera conductor. Strauss dedicated Daphne to Karl Böhm. He was not that interested or persuasive in the tone poems. They come off as somewhat stodgy. And this Zarathustra is a little bit stodgy. It just doesn't take off, in the fabulous, da ba da da ba da ba da da. Even the opening sounds a little heavy-handed and metronomic. It's very interesting, of joys and passions. That's the thing, right? Oh, it's such a great section, and it just has to have more schwung. I want schwung, lots of schwungitude. So, all right, that's Karl Böhm. All right, next we've got, this is very interesting. The London Philharmonic with Norman Del Mar. This is an important recording because Norman Del Mar was a Strauss scholar. He wrote a very fine 3-volume treatise on Strauss and his music. I mean, he knew it backwards, forwards, and sideways. And yet he was not one of the more recorded conductors, and he didn't have much opportunity to record a lot of Strauss. So what he did do was meaningful, in my view. And this is a thoughtful and intelligent, as you might expect, performance of Zarathustra. Everything is balanced properly. The whole structure comes off as very confidently projected. I think the London Philharmonic is not the ideal orchestra, to be doing it. I mean, they could be more virtuosic. There could be just more, sort of cut loose, let it all hang outedness about it. But this is a very admirable, even noble effort. It takes the music seriously. And it deserves to be taken seriously. I mean, you're going to play it. You got to play it absolutely fabulously or well. And God knows, Del Mar knows where he's going with the music. So that's interesting. An interesting version if you're a Zarathustra collector. Then we've got, Zubin Mehta and the Los Angeles Philharmonic. Oh, this is fun. He really stretches out the opening. I mean, it's big. And, these Los Angeles recordings with Mehta were, sonic spectaculars and just very, very enjoyable. And it's a really, everyone says, well, they were the Hollywood Orchestra. So, with the Hollywood flash. Actually, all of those film scores were recorded usually in England and London with the London Symphony. They were the Hollywood Orchestra. They were the ones who had that slick American sound that you read about in the Penguin Guide. Yeah, it was all the London orchestras, not the American orchestras. Mehta had the L.A. Phil sounding very European, I think. Very Vienna Phil. That was his model, the sound he had in his ear. Now, Mehta, like lots of conductors, made extra recordings of these pieces, and so you got to be careful which ones you get. If you're going to get Mehta doing Strauss, he did some in Berlin later for Sony, but get the Los Angeles ones because they're just a joy to listen to. It's everybody just strutting their stuff and having a good time, the way the music's supposed to go, frankly. With brilliance and confidence and a nice, rich, juicy sonority. And speaking of sonority, we have Wilhelm Kempff, not Wilhelm Kempff, that was the other guy, Rudolf Kempe. I get them all confused. Rudolf Kempe, these are classics. This is the classic Kempe Strauss orchestral music box with the Staatskapelle Dresden, which was the Strauss orchestra. This is such a great set. I don't actually think Zarathustra is one of the better tone poem performances in here. It's good. It's very good. What the Staatskapelle Dresden had going for it was unbelievable transparency of texture and a very lean sound, which made even Strauss's goopiest music sound fresh and unstuffy and not, it just was flowed. It flowed beautifully, and it flows beautifully here. The opening is not as spectacular as others make it. The timpani sound a little wooden, but it's the rest of it that sounds better. I mean, if you want a performance that shows how much good music there is, once you get past the opening, this one's your baby, because it's really, really, really good all the way through. Very, very solid with a nice big climax at the end. That works really well. Kempe is another one of those conductors who really knew where the music was going, and the orchestra knew how to get there, and they do. So, it may sound a little disappointing initially, but you listen to the whole thing. You have to consider it whole, and it's a performance that, that's I think what Strauss wanted. You wanted to take in the whole thing. So Kempe is terrific. Also, like Kempe, similar in terms of musicality, balance, clarity, inner logic, all of these things, was Blomstedt in San Francisco. Fabulously well recorded by Decca. He did all the major tone poems in San Francisco. It's in this big box, and some of them you could still get separately. Glorious playing, excellent recording. Blomstedt was a wonderful Strauss conductor. He also recorded these things for Denon with the Staatskapelle Dresden, but they weren't as good. They weren't as interesting. They didn't sound as good. The orchestra didn't play with quite as much pizzazz as they did for Kempe, although the performances are quite similar. It's the San Francisco one you want to get on Decca. And these are performances, all of them, that really, make the case for Strauss being not a great second-rate composer, but a first-rate composer, one whose musical substance is really there, even if it's all on the surface, which it is, we know. But it builds to something larger than just the individual highlight bits. And Blomstedt was fabulous at doing that sort of thing, too. He was a very self-effacing, or is, he's still out there, sort of, a very self-effacing conductor, and he conducts these tone poems with absolute confidence and innate musicality in every bar. They're beautiful performances. So are these, for the most part, anyway. This was his famous stuff. Haitink with the Concertgebouw. He was not a big Straussian. Haitink was not a flash conductor. He was another one who was sober. And I think some of the humor in this music sort of passed him by, shall we say. But his Ein Heldenleben was tremendous, and his Zarathustra is tremendous. Beautiful, beautiful performances. Really, the star of the show is the orchestra. And one of the things about Also sprach Zarathustra, of course, is that it does give you the opportunity to hear so many great orchestras strutting their stuff. I mean, the orchestra is as much the star of the show as the conductor. And they have to be up for it. And they certainly are here. It's a beautiful, beautiful set. On Decca, you also get, besides Heldenleben and Zarathustra, you get Don Juan, Till Eulenspiegel, Death and Transfiguration, and your Rosenkavalier. He also did the Alpine Symphony. Actually, it's not on here, but he did that. And a lot of people like that performance, too. I'm not as sold on it. I think it just needs to have a little bit more, indulgent excess than Haitink would ever allow himself. However, there is a little bit of indulgent excess here. Nimi Jarvi with the Royal Scottish, or in this case, it was still the Scottish National Orchestra. It hadn't been knighted or crowned or whatever happens to it in those countries where you've got, sort of decadent leftover monarchies with nothing better to do than anoint things. Finster just joined us here. Yes, you over there? Finster, what are you doing? Okay, yes. But we've got Also sprach Zarathustra. There we go. Well, I don't have enough space here to do all of this. Hey, honey. With exactly the right timings, 32 minutes and 31 seconds. And oh, does the orchestra play? And oh, does Jarvi let them play? And it's just exciting, and it's wonderfully recorded, and all the climaxes really hit home, and they're all having a great time, and I had a great time. This is a terrific series of Strauss tone poems. Chandos really ought to box them all up, all of Jarvi Strauss, actually, in a box and put it together, and that would be just wonderful. Are you listening, Mr. Heyman, who now owns Chandos? Get all the Jarvi stuff, put it all together. It's just great. So yeah, that's just exciting, and there are times when you don't want to have to worry about making something sound more meaningful. You just want to let your hair down and let it rip, and rip it does. Another ripper is Mackerras, Charles Mackerras. Did you know he made a recording of this with the Royal Philharmonic? And, as usual with Charles Mackerras, everything fits effortlessly into place. He's having a good time. The orchestra's having a good time. They play really, really, really well for him. It's a terrific performance. You have more of the bell than you usually have at the climax. This is on Tring Records. It was this Royal Philharmonic series. And Mackerras did a few things in here. There was like a Sibelius too and some other stuff that he did. This one also has Don Juan and Till Eulenspiegel, and they're all excellent performances. They really are. So, don't sell and let the fact that it costs like $1.95 and you could buy it in a supermarket let you think that this is anything less than superior musicianship, because Mackerras is Mackerras. So that's fun. That's a good one. Yes, I know. Sorry about that. I didn't mean to startle you there. Oh yeah, Eugene Ormandy. Oh wow, Eugene Ormandy in Philadelphia. Now he made 3 recordings of this thing: one for Sony, one for RCA, and one for EMI. Right at the end of his life. It was an early digital, one of the last things he ever did. It was a piece that was near and dear to his heart, and Ormandy understood, like nobody else, that it was an opportunity for the orchestra to really strut its stuff, and they do. His best recording is this one. This is the RCA version, remastered very beautifully by Dutton, and coupled with the Saint-Saëns Organ Symphony. It sounds great. The orchestra sounds fabulous. They really did. And when this came out, I remember when it came out in 1975, and I was in high school, and it was a sonic spectacular. That was the way it was promoted. It was in quad. It had throbbing organ pedals. It's an electric organ actually, but throbbing organ pedals, and it was. I had it. I used to carry it around when I was going to class, and I went to my friends' houses, and we'd put it on because we wanted to hear who had the best sound system. And that was a perfectly legitimate way to play with this music. That's one of the things that it was for back in the day. That's why I think it's surprising that Zarathustra doesn't seem to be a big a deal anymore. It's still a sonic showpiece, without a doubt. And, a performance that treats it as an uninhibited sonic showpiece is perfectly legitimate and thrilling to listen to. And I love this one. So there you go. It's the RCA from 1975. Have to keep that in mind. If you think, however, Strauss should be played a little more slowly, and as the decadent hog wallow that it so often is, then Sinopoli and the New York Phil is your guy, or are your guys, or are your people. Sinopoli Strauss, I love Sinopoli Strauss. It is excessive. It is a very fin de siècle decadent approach to the music. He takes his time. The strings are really slurpy. The brass just wails on it. Oh gosh, it's fun. You may not want it to hear it this way every time you hear it. There's a big case for leaner Strauss, and he's the absolute opposite of the Staatskapelle Dresden, which is ironic because he conducted them, for quite a while. But these are beautiful performances. There's a really slow but delicious Death and Transfiguration on here too, beautifully recorded. Sinopoli cared about sonics. He cared about the juicy timbres he was trying to get out of the orchestra. And this is a succulent performance. Yeah, phenomenal. So there's that one. Then, if you really want the Vienna Philharmonic, again, we're talking about that. You want to hear the Vienna Philharmonic really strut its stuff in this music. Andre Previn on Telarc. Thank God Telarc got a chance to do this. Previn was a terrific Straussian. This one is a little on the slow side as well. It's about 35 minutes long. It takes about 3 more minutes than the piece usually takes. But it's the Vienna Philharmonic. He's slowing down so we can smell the roses along the way. And when the playing is that good, it's fine. Previn made a lot of Strauss recordings. He was a fine Strauss conductor. I remember him doing Ein Heldenleben on television. Televised performance of it. It was really fun. That was how I discovered the work, seeing it that way initially before I got the recording. And this is also coupled with Death and Transfiguration. Previn got kind of slow and droopy toward the end of his life, but he was still in really good shape, and Telarc was there to record it an amazing sound. These were some of the best recordings made in Vienna at the time. And it sounds great. 1988 is when this came out. So if you can still find it and you want to hear the Vienna Philharmonic doing its very best in this particular work, this is your baby, without a doubt. Next we have, Lorin Maazel. Lorin Maazel, he had the most baffling career of anybody in the entire history of classical music. He recorded everything 100 times. Did anybody care? Was anybody running out to buy the stuff? I really don't know. It was amazing. He just kept doing it for every single label in the world. And Strauss was a major preoccupation of his. His last big pile of Strauss was this box with the Bavarian Radio Symphony Orchestra. He was another conductor who got painfully slow. Oh, yeah, did he slow down toward the end of his life. But this was before that. I mean, he was still a little on the heavy-handed side at this point in his life. However, I only mention this because these RCA recordings, because I want to point out that there is an earlier, much earlier recording featuring the Philharmonia that was made for EMI back in his EMI days. And supposedly, I don't know if the Maazel Warner box is out or it's coming out or something. This will be in there, I suppose. But this is the Royal Classics super cheapy budget edition with an Andre Previn Vienna Don Juan, actually. This is Maazel's best Zarathustra. The timing is normal, 32 minutes. It is wonderfully shaped. He was always a superb technician. He controls the pace of the piece just about ideally. And the big climax is big. He just nails it. I mean, it's a cataclysm. It actually, I think, sort of beats the opening of the work. When finally the whole thing, the bells come crashing in and all that. It's not that you hear the bell, but the rest of the orchestra, they just go nuts. It's fantastic. Absolutely first rate. So if you want to get Maazel, and you should, because he was such a fine conductor in music that was very complicated. And this is complicated with lots of parts and things. He was terrific at that. So you are in very good shape with the Philharmonia Maazel, also sprach Zarathustra. So that's where I would go with that one. Then we're now down to the last three. The three biggies. At last, we are getting there. The three biggies are, first, Fritz Reiner. Fritz Reiner in Chicago. Now, he did it twice. Here they are. The first one is usually coupled with Ein Heldenleben. It was from 1954, in astonishing sonics for the period. But the remake is better. It sounds better. The orchestra is better. The whole thing is better. It's coupled in this case with the Rosenkavalier waltzes and the burlesque with Byron Janis. It's in, of course, the Reiner box. There's also a Reiner Strauss box that has both recordings in it. He was, of course, a Strauss guy to end all Strauss guys. This is from 1962, and it's a knockout. It's absolutely nice. It's a little bit on the quick side. I think it's a little faster than most of them. Well, no, this one's 33 minutes and 58 seconds. Okay, fine. The first one is 31 minutes and 48 seconds. So there you go. That one's a little quicker. I like this one better, though. The strings sound better. And, oh, wow, the playing is just... And Reiner has the whole piece in his baton. It's a thrill. The other great one, the top three, is this one with William Steinberg and the Boston Symphony, 29 minutes and 56 seconds. More like Strauss's own. It's almost as if Strauss himself were conducting it, but he cared. I mean, first of all, the Boston Symphony is astonishingly marvelous. They play like gods for Steinberg. This is coupled with the Planets, by the way, which is also amazing and also very swift. And Steinberg's approach to the piece is absolutely no nonsense, exciting, intense, beautifully structured. Everything's wonderfully knit together. It has no dead spots, and wow, do they play! It's just thrilling. I mean, if you want one of the all-time great sonic excitement, get your pulse racing, Zarathustra experiences. This is your baby on DG Originals. However, if I have to pick one, and I'm so reluctant to let go of Steinberg and Reiner, they are so amazing, both of them, it would have to be Karajan and Berlin from 1973, it looks like. Yes, dear? You agree with me? Do you? You think so? You like Karajan and Berlin? Yeah, it was way before you were born. Yeah. But, wow. You know, Karajan, of course, had already recorded it here for Decca with the Vienna Philharmonic. This is the one that was used in the movie, 2001. Yeah, you like Vienna? Yeah, okay. This is the one that was used in the movie. It has no organ because they didn't have an organ in Vienna then when they made this recording. It's sort of, there's an organ. They dubbed something in, I think. Someone knows the story. All I know is that it sounds awful. It's not in the same key as the rest of the piece. It just sounds lousy. It's a good performance. It's Vienna, but it's not as good as Previn's. And the truth of the matter is that Karajan really outdid himself for this one. He did another digital one after this, which is not nearly as good, and it's garishly recorded, and he diddles the percussion parts, like the triangle part and stuff like that at the opening. He does some weird stuff. He always took the opening a little bit strangely. You know, if you look at, we've talked about this before, by the way, in discussing this piece. If you look at the opening, the rhythm is da, 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 cha-cha. Karajan always went da-dum. He like cuts the note value in half. Works fabulously well. He always did that. It's great the way he does it. You know, I may not be exactly what Strauss wrote, but I don't care. Maybe it's because he's upping the tempo a little. I don't know. It doesn't make any difference. It's a stunning, absolutely gorgeous performance with the best string playing you've ever heard in your life. You know, and whooping horns and it just you know, makes the whole piece sound as inevitable as the crack of doom. And God knows Strauss could use that. It's another performance that knows how to get around all the dead spots and to just keep you totally mesmerized by the sheer intensity and beauty of the playing. And it's also very well recorded, given that it's Karajan Berlin, which could sound kind of scruffy. So this is the however pick, but my God, if you get Reiner, if you get Steinberg, if you get, oh gosh, you know, who knows, all these other ones, you could get Blomstedt or Kempe or Jarvi or Macaris, or we're spoiled for choice, as I'm sure you're aware, or at least you are now. So I hope that this has given you a sense of what's out there, what to look for, and that you give this piece a spin if it's been off your playlist for a while, because it seems to be off of everybody's. It's still great music. Maybe not perfect, but great music, and such a wonderful showpiece for great conducting and great orchestral playing. And there will always be a place for that, I think. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.